The Biden administration is getting plenty of pushback after issuing two executive orders related to fighting the pandemic. One of the orders mandates vaccines for federal workers and contractors. Now, the other requires that public companies with more than 100 employees make their workers get vaccinated or subject them to weekly testing. Now, President Biden says this move will impact around 100 million workers, or basically 2/3 of the U.S. workforce. He says the patience of vaccinated Americans is wearing thin as 80 million people remain unvaccinated at this point. The Republican National Committee says it will sue over this mandate, calling it, quote, unconstitutional and authoritarian. This is leading to a lot of questions about what can and cannot be done by the president. All of these legal issues surrounding the vaccine mandate can be a little bit confusing. So today we're going to bring in an expert. Talking about this is Shoemaker labor and employment attorney Derek Thurman Jr. Mr. Thurman, thanks for being here. This is often confusing. You know, a lot of people, when they hear something like this and the hair on the back of their neck stands up, their first words are, "I'll sue." So first question, can they sue over something like this?
Well, certainly, to be glib, you can sue over anything. Ultimately, however, what the president has done is tasked OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, as well as Medicare and Medicaid, to come up with regulations mandating that certain employers and certain healthcare providers require their employees to be vaccinated or tested weekly. OSHA has very broad authority in protecting workers, worker safety and health. And I think ultimately, although there will be challenges, I think OSHA has the authority to issue the mandate that the president envisions.
Well, you bring up a good point about OSHA. I mean, they can require hard hats and steel-toed boots in certain places for certain things. But, legally, can they require companies to mandate that an employee actually get a vaccine? I mean, isn't that a little different?
Certainly, it's not something we've seen before. OSHA has in the past required employers to make, for example, the hepatitis B vaccine available to certain workers, but has not, taken the step of actually mandating a vaccine that I'm aware of. But I do think it's within OSHA's broad powers. There will be exceptions. OSHA will have to allow in their regulations for, health exceptions, potentially religious exceptions. And your employers are going to have an option of weekly testing in lieu of vaccination. So it's not an absolute vaccine mandate. There will be an alternative for weekly testing.
So can these public companies face penalties if they choose not to follow the mandate? And is that actionable in court? I guess it goes back to what you said. Anything's really actionable in court.
Certainly. OSHA's regulatory scheme that's already in place provides for a maximum of a $14,000 penalty per violation. So if an OSHA inspector shows up and finds a guard taken off a machine, the penalty available for that could be as high as $14,000. The question I have is, if an employer refuses to vaccinate their workforce or test their workforce, will that maximum penalty be per employee or just for the one refusal? My suspicion is it would be per employee. So those fines could get large quickly.
So we've talked a lot about public companies. What about some of the private companies? Maybe a private company with 150 employees. They're over the threshold, but they're still not very big, and they're private.
They will still be affected the way I read. Right now we only have the president's speech and the transcript of the president's speech. It says all employers with 100 or more employees. So my guess is it will be private companies and public companies.
To be clear, this is an executive order. This isn't necessarily a law. One of the things I've seen on social media is the president can't make laws. Congress make laws. This is an executive order, and there is a distinction between the two, certainly.
Yes, but what the president has done is put it in OSHA's hands. And Congress has in the past already given OSHA extremely broad authority to issue regulations regarding safety and health. And so the president here is not himself ordering a mandate. I know it may seem nuanced, but he's not himself ordering a mandate so much as telling OSHA, this is what I want you to do. Go through your rulemaking process and come up with a rule that does these basic things. The rule we see from OSHA will be much more detailed, than what the president has given us generally.
Derek Thurman Jr., thank you very much for talking about this, because a lot of viewers have questions about this. So it's important to kind of cut through the minutia out there that on social media especially. So thanks for talking about this today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You bet.